Hey guys, Connor here at eTrailer.com. Today we're going to be showing you how to install the Valterra double rotating waste valve on our 2017 Thor Freedom Elite. Now, as with any motorhome with a septic system, we're going to have both a black and a gray water tank. The black water tank is going to be for all of our sewage, and the gray water tank is going to be for all of our drainage. As you can see here, we have our valve at the rear of the vehicle here, and this is going to allow us to empty both of those tanks when we're done with our camping trip. As you see here, we have a handle for the black water tank, and then we have another handle here on the other side for our gray water tank. We also have a bayonet fitting on the end of here, which we could remove, and then attach our sewer hose so we can go to the dump station at the RV park. A couple common reasons you might want to replace your wastewater valves is number one, as you can see, it hangs down sort of low here to the bottom of the vehicle, so these sometimes can get caught up on things at the road and break off. Another reason you might want to replace it is over time the gaskets inside here can wear out, and it's just a lot easier to replace the entire assembly than to try to fix and repair the gaskets in here. A common sign that you have a leak is if you go ahead and take off your cap here and we see some residue coming down. As you can see here, we have two different size pipes on the end of our valve here. We have the smaller 1.5 inch diameter pipe, which is for our gray water, and then on the other side here we have the larger 3-inch diameter pipe, which is for our black water tank. Now make sure when we're selecting our valves, we pay attention to the fittings on the end. There's two common types of fittings. We have a spigot fitting, which is over here on the 3-inch side, and a hub fitting, which is over here on the 1.5 inch side. Now these can be reversed, so just make sure you pay attention when you're ordering your waste valve. The spigot fitting, the coupler actually, is going to go over the spigot fitting, whereas the hub fitting, the pipe is actually going to slide in, which you can see right here. Now the really nice feature about this waste valve is that it rotates. Not all of these dual valves have this rotating feature, so it's a really nice ease of use. As you can see here, if we're on an unlevel ground or we're in a tight spot here, or we just can't get the water to fully drain, we can easily just sort of rotate the valve down, as well as up back in the stored position. Now as far as the installation process goes, this is going to vary by case. As we see here, ours was actually broken, which is why we're replacing it, but the process could be a bit differently if yours was leaking, for example. Now in addition to the waste valve, we're going to need a few other smaller components, such as some couplers here that we have, as well as some ABS sealant, and later in the video you'll see that we use some gasket maker and a band clamp as well for the black water tank. Now let's jump in and show you how it's done. To start our installation today, we're going to want to come to the rear of our coach here, and we're going to want to locate our black and gray water tanks. Now we're going to be replacing the valve today, so what we're going to want to do is make sure our tanks are flushed fully beforehand. Now when we do break the seals for the valves, we may still see a little bit of fluid coming out. That's okay, it's just some leftover remnants in the tank. So what we want to do for this, we want to make sure we have our safety glove as well as our safety glasses. And now let's show you how it's done. Now the next part of our installation here is going to vary by case depending on where it was broken. However, the end result is we need to get all the old valves out. As you can see here, the old valve is going to mount up sort of like this, and ours actually broke right here, right before the connection to the gray water tank. So basically, once we remove the main body here, we just need to remove this other gray water valve. And then we can start the installation with our new valve. Now in order to move the old gray valve, we have a couple options. This one's pretty well off already. We're just going to take a reciprocating saw or a hacksaw, whichever you have, and make a clean cut line here. That way we can fuse our new couplers on. Now that we have all the old pieces of valve out, we can go ahead and take our new Valterra rotating waste valve, and we can just sort of set it up into place, hold it here, and see about right where we want it to sit. Now as you can see here, we're going to need some extra pipes and couplings in order to fill the gap here from the end of our gray water tank pipe, and then lead into the black water tank pipe. So we actually do sell the couplings here that we're going to need for this at eTrailer. We see the coupling for the 1.5 inch pipe is going to go over this. Now once we have the new coupler installed here, we're going to want to get some straight 1.5 inch piping, and this is going to be made of ABS. We want to make sure we're not using PVC because the fusion process is actually a little bit differently. You're going to need to pick these up at your local hardware store. And then what we can do is we can just mock this up, sort of generally hold and see how much pipe we're going to need to cut off here. Keep in mind, we do need to make space for the 3-inch pipe going into the black water tank. So I'm just going to roughly hold it up here and sort of hold on my thumb here where I think we're going to want to cut this so we can fuse the two together. Now that we've cut off the section of the pipe we need and we've used some sandpaper to clean up some of the burrs, we're just going to do a dry fit up here with making sure not to glue everything in place yet until we get all the parts cut to length and we get the valve on and know everything's going to fit. So as you can see there, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to work our way from the black tank forward to the valve. So now we can take our new valve, we can slip it over the piece of pipe we cut. Make sure we push all the way in there so it doesn't throw off any of our measurements here. Now once that is loosely hanging on there, we're going to want to take our 3-inch outer diameter pipe and we're going to want to connect this to the black tank. Now keep in mind again, we do not sell these here at eTrailer.com, but most of your local hardware stores should have these for you. So what we're going to do is just hold the pipe up here and we're just going to give a rough estimate on how much we think we need to cut off. Please keep in mind you don't want to cut it too short. So if you want to make your measurements larger at first and then cut the pipe down more, that'll be ideal. Now that we have our pipe cut to the size we think we need, let's go ahead and try to mock everything up. Now as we can see here, we're not going to be able to line it up as is. The reason for this is the pipes are actually going to have to slide into these fittings, and we don't have a lot of room to move these back and forth. So what I found the solution the easiest to be is to go ahead and remove the valve on the gray water side here. Now in order to do this, we're going to want to take an 8mm socket. We're just going to loosen all these up, that way we can pop the valve off. Let's go ahead and set these in a safe place. We can remock up the pipes. So we want to make sure that the pipe going into the black water tank, we want to have that fed in there as much as we can. Then once we get that nice and secure, we can go ahead and install the adapter we've made here for the gray water side. Now we can position our valve up into place in between the two. Now as you can see here, it's a little loose fit right now. All we need to do is just take either side, move it out a little bit until we get a tighter fit. Then once we get everything lined up, we can go ahead and insert our bolts back into place to secure the valve. Now keep in mind there is a gasket on either side of this valve. Since we took that out, we want to make sure those are back in place as well. Now that we get our valve reattached here, we notice here that the output valve is facing the ground. What we can do is, before we glue everything together, we're just going to simply tilt this up towards the exterior of the V. That way it'll be a lot easier to connect our sewer hose. Now that we have all our fittings cut to the correct length and we've mocked everything up so we know it all works together, we can go ahead and start fusing on the new pieces. Now in order to do this, we're going to need this ABS weld-on solvent, which can be purchased here from eTrailer.com. Please keep in mind, this is made specifically for ABS fittings. The fusion process is actually more of a welding as opposed to PVC pipes where they use more of a glue. So what we're going to do here is open our can up. And then once we have it open, we're going to take our solvent here and we're essentially just going to try to get it around the outer diameter of the pipe, making sure not to make too much of a mess. And once we have a good coat of the solvent around the outside diameter of the pipe, we can go ahead and press on our first coupler here. And then we want to push that all the way back to make sure we get as much as a seal as possible with the pipe. And then we're going to let that dry for a few minutes and we can move on to the other side. Now the process to seal our pipe into the black water tank is going to be a little bit different than we used previously. For this step, we're going to be actually using some Loctite gasket maker, which can be purchased here at eTrailer.com. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to get a good coat of the gasket maker on the outside diameter of this pipe here, and then we're going to press it into the black water tank. Now once we have the pipe inserted into the neck of the black water tank, we're going to go ahead and take a band clamp, which can be obtained through eTrailer.com. We're going to want to place this over the neck of the black water tank. Once this is in place, we're going to go ahead and take an 8mm socket and ratchet and tighten the band clamp up so we can get a good seal. One thing to keep in mind is it is going to take a little bit of time for the gasket maker to dry, so we'll want to wait a little bit before we move on to the next step. Now you can see we have some excess gasket maker coming out the edges here, so we're just basically going to smooth this over and form a nice clean seal around the pipe. Now once we have our larger tank inserted into the black water, we can go ahead and finish our connections here on the gray water side. So make sure when we're putting on our ABS sealant that we coat not only the outside diameter of the pipe, but also the inner diameter of the fitting as well. And now we're just going to continue on piecing everything back together. Please keep in mind we do want to coat both the inside of the fitting and the outside diameter of the pipe for all our connections. And now that we have everything in position, we have all of our fittings coated with our ABS sealant, we can go ahead and reinstall the valve and tighten everything down. Make sure that we reinstall the valve, the rubber gaskets are in place. This is going to help seal everything up. Now you are going to fight with this valve a little bit here, so it helps if we have an extra set of hands, but essentially we're just going to have to play with these tubes here until we can get the flanges to line up. And again, make sure we already have the rubber gaskets in place. Now that we have our valve installed, we want to make sure we have the valve pointing in the right direction. Now we want the handle to face the outside of the RV, so what we're simply going to do is just rotate this valve inside the two flanges there. And once that's done, we can then take our nuts and our bolts and insert them back in to hold everything in place. Now once we get all our bolts inserted, with our nuts on the opposite ends, we're going to take our 8mm socket and our 10mm wrench, and then we're going to want to evenly secure all these fasteners until they're nice and tight. And now that we have everything in place, we're going to want to go ahead and give it some time to let everything seal and cure over time. I would say around 20 or 30 minutes or so, and then we can go into the RV and pour some water down our sinks and our toilet so we can test everything out to make sure there's no leaks. Now the easiest way to check for our valves leaking is to head to our bathroom in the camper, because that's going to be the closest destination to the gray and black water tanks. All we're going to do is take a gallon of water here, we're going to pour half a gallon in the sink, we're going to pour half a gallon in the toilet, we're then going to flush the toilet, let all the water run through the lines, and then we'll go back to the outside of the camper and we'll test the valves to make sure they've held. And now, once the water's in there, make sure we flush it to send it to the black water tank. Now that we have water in both of the tanks, we want to make sure our valves is held and none of our fittings are leaking. So upon visual inspection here, we don't see any leaks. However, what you want to do is take a piece of cardboard, set it under the valves, and let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes, and make sure you don't see any leaks. That'll let us know that all the fittings and the pipes are secure. However, we do want to remove our bayonet cap here and make sure the valves are sealed as well. As you can see, we don't have any water here, so we know those have done their job. Now keep in mind, we've already flushed both of our tanks, so all the water we're draining now is just fresh water we poured in there earlier. Now just to show you that the valves are working, we're going to go ahead and empty both the gray and black water tanks into our trash can here. We're going to remove the bayonet cap. Okay, so we're going to open our black water tank here with the valve. As you can see there, clear water. Once the black water tank is about empty, we're going to go ahead and pull our handle for our gray water tank. Now that we have everything installed, we've tested for leaks. That's going to do it today for the Valterra rotating waste valve.